All right, here we go. Theory, or theoretically, I mean. Hopefully, this audio is okay. For anybody watching the recording afterwards, you can skip the first, I'll say, 5 minutes, as I need to keep this relatively short, preferably only about an hour or so. And this should be live already. Shouldn't still be under a waiting section. Channel content, live. And okay, it is live. Let's turn that on. Wait for it to load. And control room. Dismiss that. Wait for that to load. And we'll see if the internet holds up this time. Since last time, as soon as I started talking about how Boeing had somebody assassinated, all of a sudden I started having internet issues. That was interesting. But so uh, while we're in the waiting room, so to call it, for anyone who doesn't know, yeah, Boeing straight up killed a dude because he was gonna blow out all their secrets about how they're not actually practicing any form of safety compliance anymore. Not that that wasn't, not that that was actually a secret anymore, but they straight up killed him because he was the next day going to give actual testimony in court about how they're not complying with anything anymore. But the fact that, he mysteriously killed himself the day before giving his testimony about that kind of, gave the obvious away. And so now Boeing's starting to fall under for that as well. And they're just undergoing their entire downfall as they have deserved for a long time. So for anybody outside of the Western sphere who still wants to go on a rage about how I'm a Western shill or whatever, and I always promote Western stuff over, or always promote American stuff at least over any other country's stuff. That is not true and has never been true. Boeing is absolutely a complete catastrophe and piece of crap. The stuff that is good from them is anything they designed before the early 2000s or so. So Airbus over here, yes, I know Germany, you have your part in it, and so does the Netherlands, I think, but I give it to France predominantly. So French aviation supremacy from now on, as I've been saying for almost 15 years, Airbus is superior, and they've inherently been superior for quite a while. But they have now, several times over the last week, they've actually finally, for the first time ever, reached stock price parity with Boeing as they rapidly rise up because everyone's shifting over their orders to Airbus and Boeing is continuing to plummet downwards. How long? Yep, for okay, about a minute and a half until we start, or until we start for real. So let me chug this water real quick, and hopefully my audio is working properly. I think I have the volume set adjusted, but I'll find out theoretically from chat if I have not. Unless this is another dead chat day. I should get that map up, which I actually forgot to update portions of. This one, yeah, is it gonna... And yes, I did indeed forget to add some of the other strikes in there, but I'll do that another time. Okay, so somewhat leaning into start while we give people just a minute or two left to file in. Then we go full ham. So Myanmar, the junta over in Myanmar has crossed the line that they were intending on crossing, but now they finally done it. I have way too much stuff stacked up here. Yep. So that was one of the recent ones. They started with lotteries in some cities, and in others, they're just straight up grabbing dudes off the street and throwing them into the military to then just put an AK in their hands and throw them at the rebels. And that's not really, working the way they probably hoped it would, as the dudes that they're just like grabbing and forcing into the military are either A, fleeing combat, B, just defecting in general and trying to flee to like Bangladesh or India, or in the worst case scenario for the military dictatorship in Myanmar, are immediately just turning and joining whatever rebel group that they're being thrown against. So anyone with a functioning brain could have seen that outcome, but apparently the remaining five generals of the initially seven general ruling dynasty group, whatever they want to call themselves, do not have functioning brains. And they decided to do this anyways because they're running out of motivated troops and out of material. And it's immediately backfiring because, of course, it is. That's the only result that was going to come from this. But so this is, to give you a clear indication that they have reached their point of final desperation, and they're quite aware that uh, they're basically quite aware that they are losing and that they're going to lose this. So I don't know what kind of time frame I can lay out for when they finally self topple, basically, but that is underway as a process. We get anybody else? No one's saying anything, at least. I'm going to assume everybody can hear me then. Because if you don't complain, then I have no way of knowing whether or not there's something for you to complain about. And Iraq. One last bit of actually uplifting news before we get into all the heavy stuff. Iraq actually, just after a few weeks after I made that video about how low on water the entire situation is there and how much farmland space they've lost, they just got a huge amount of rain over the last few days. They got deluged, actually resulted in some flooding, unfortunately, and there were some fatalities involved in that, obviously, and obviously like damage to cities. But it has massively restored their various water levels, which were otherwise going in, the more undesired direction. So that situation has uh, held itself off now for the moment. Although, again, obviously, if they get this one deluge real quick and then go without any rain for like another 5 straight years after this, then there's that's kind of like a point of no return. But we will see how that goes. So, getting into the real deal, I was speaking in the stream last week about how Ukraine, and in that video, the shorter video I made, that might be getting shadow blocked or something, I guess. Ukraine uh, built up somewhat discreetly a massive stockpile of their own domestically built long range suicide drones, which they started launching at the thing that would actually hurt Russia the most, which is their oil and gas infrastructure. Primarily, they have been striking, once you go back enough to see. Uh, and what did I stack up in here? What was that? Oh yeah, that was the two trains in out in Siberia that just hit each other head on. Again, that's the second time this has happened in like 1 month, because one or both of the train operators on either or both of the trains was intoxicated, aka drunk. Yeah, there's several more, several of them. There's some satellite imagery of like the wreckage afterwards on one of them. Here's one of the fires in progress. Not at this moment, just it was in progress while that was filmed. Here's satellite imagery of smoke rising from one on fire. Here's two more that got struck there with videos attached. So they've hit, obviously since last week, since I made that stream last week, they've hit even more. And so the damage dealt is climbing up rather decently. We scroll over here. So these blackout spots, which I forgot to add, there was some in Volgograd, and there was one in, I think, uh, not that's Bryansk. Which what's the one right above Bryansk? I'm forgetting. I know it's Leningrad, Pskov, and I'm forgetting what's right underneath Pskov and between Bryansk and Pskov. But there was one there, I think, or it might have been in Novgorod, but I'm pretty sure it was up there, and there was some in Volgograd, and one in there was one in Tambov, and then the one in okay, I did get the one in Ryazan. So the number of hits to refineries specifically has been rather immense, and the number that are confirmed down are enough to have taken down 11 or 12% of Russia's refining capability, and that is stacking on top of the 5% or so that was down from this one in Nizhny Novgorod, who before getting struck by Ukrainian drones last week had already had one of its major units just explode a month ago or so, due to poor handling of refitting equipment or something. Cause still unstated to this day, but it just exploded all by itself back in February or January. So that's a total of 17%. And then a somewhere between 5 and 10%, I believe it's 8, are down for maintenance that would be regular maintenance if they were not constrained for parts and equipment already, on top of now not getting as much smuggled through China as they were initially, because now Chinese companies are trying to avoid the whole secondary sanctions thing. So some of those maintenance downings are in the likelihood area of actually just not coming back. But those in charge in any particular region have to list it as just temporary maintenance. Otherwise, they would, you know, get in trouble, Kremlin type of trouble, death resulting type of trouble. And plus, also alongside the refineries, there have been a lot of storage tank, storage depot damage, which is a critical thing, although not initially thought of as much. Because remember, oil, as I said in that video, it comes up out of the ground through its pipeline fixtures, it or through the well fixtures, goes into the pipelines, flows either to a storage depot into storage tanks, or to a refinery directly, where it gets refined into fuel, and then that fuel flows through pipelines into storage tanks, from which it is then taken by tanker trucks out to wherever it is going as its final like fuel station destination, or in the case of many of these border regions, to Russian military vehicles on the front line. So you can only you can only pump so much oil or refine so much fuel as long as you do have the tank space with which to stow it. If you exceed or if you drop below a certain threshold, you inevitably have to cut yourself back intentionally because if you overproduce while you don't have enough storing space, then there is nothing you can do with the stuff that's coming up. And you either will get a pressure overload and have your pipelines burst, or you'll just have to light a fire at the end of the stick, metaphorically, and just burned off. So that process is ongoing, and there are several more in that region that are likely going to be struck. Uh, there are there is another one in Volgograd, and uh, there is another one. I do believe there is one up in Pskov itself. Plus, there's the one in Novgorod that's not too damaged. And there's also, I think this right here is Yaroslavl. They were able to reach that one, and they didn't inflict the damage they wanted, but that was one of the earlier range testing attacks several weeks ago. So I would expect the Yaroslavl one to be targeted again. But in response to all of this, as one could expect, Russia is now having to deploy anti air systems, SAM systems, to all of its various oil and gas infrastructure critical sites all across this region. So that's now on top of all of the SAM systems they have dedicated along border regions, those they've now had to place around Moscow because of the drone strikes last year throughout Moscow, the ones they've had to place around St. Petersburg, the ones they've had to flood into Crimea, and the ones that they have dedicated to other places where they operate overseas, primarily Syria. So the amount of sunk cost elsewhere in terms of air defense capability is now taking a sharp upward tick, which was probably actually hmm, that might have been the ultimate real goal behind everything. But the damage to the refineries and storage tanks themselves, particularly the ones along the border that are the ones supplying Russian combat vehicles on the front line, still was probably like the actual full end goal, but it might have been really close, like a 55-45 split between the two. All right. What else do we have after that? Oh, and actually, on the subject of air defense, so it was a known fact previously that Russian missiles of various kinds, their various smart munitions, did utilize Western electronic components, primarily from Japan and South Korea. However, now that they have been cut off from those for 2 years plus and are now also not getting them smuggled from China anymore because Chinese companies want to avoid scrutiny that would result in secondary sanctions, they're now having to rely on either their own stuff or Chinese made electronics, which is starting to turn bad and is starting to result in higher failure rates, like quickly rising failure rates, particularly in their air defense missiles. Their their air launch stuff is still working okay for the most part. Their dumb bombs that they drop obviously are dumb, so they don't really rely on anything. But the air defense stuff is really starting to not do its job. All right, next down the list. All right, I think I have to scroll a ways for this. Oh yeah, So you remember that incursion into Belgorod uh, last year by the Russian defector groups or dissident groups? That is being repeated, but this time I don't think I had anything else in particular other than just a more recent. Oh yeah. So they have done a three-pronged thing this time. Excuse me, I told you to zoom. Please zoom. So they've done a three-pronged thing, uh, two angles into Belgorod and one into Kursk, and they are not like going for anything. They're just trying to tie down Russian assets and some small degree of force to force some amount of redirection. And it's beginning to tip towards requiring a bit more because the initial border defense groups kind of fled, and they've. I did not tell you to tip the map, and the distant groups have only gone a few kilometers in, and that's the point. They're not supposed to actually go further, and they're kind of just sitting around in the woods, just chilling, waiting for each subsequent attempt by whatever local group of the Russian forces that assumed they were just going to be sitting around at the border and not having to fight in the actual war. They're the the defector groups are now just kind of chilling in the woods in each place, just like waiting for each attempt by the locally stationed Russian forces to try to force them out, which haven't really worked thus far. So eventually, the like locally stationed, initially just border guard forces are going to have to be forced to like call higher up and admit the fact that they can't really do anything and that they're going to need actual help, like from a legitimately more sizable force, which is likely the end goal of what this whole angle is trying to achieve to sort of force them to actually like put stuff over here. Whether to make it so that stuff is not available to be used actually in the Ukrainian front lines itself, or whether to just get it over here to where it's really close to the border and thus within shoot down range, as was seen with several helicopters and that one IL 76 cargo transport plane several months back when the group near Sumi did manage to shoot that, or it might have been stationed north of Kharkiv, but I think it was just east of Sumi. They managed to shoot those few down across the border because they goaded them into like coming really close somehow. So I'm assuming that's what's the angle being played with this, although there might be other stuff going on. But it is now on top of the upcoming, because it will take a few weeks for the knockdown or knock-on effects to be felt from the refineries and depot blasts to manifest on the like consumer end. On top of the moderate, not really, but semi-tangible issues with fuel and the sudden price spikes this has caused, this is now going into the whole population is actually feeling the war thing because Belgorod is now starting to do actual uh, temporarily permanent resident evacuations of not the city itself yet, because that would be too humiliating to do, but the surrounding areas are now being actually temporarily, permanently evacuated to other locales, either further in Valgorod or up in these other regions up there. And we have the hilarious attempt by Russia of a sub decoy. So, oh, I didn't want the article. I wanted to make the image bigger. Make the image bigger. You're not going to make the image bigger. Come on. So this is the sub sitting at presumably Novorossiysk because everything's left Sevastopol. But they put some decoys on just in case. And their decoy was like painting a big silhouette on the concrete, not like, making a fake, quick inflatable sub looking thing on the water where a submarine would be. But no, they just painted a big sub shape on the concrete. You know, that concrete, that's what submarines swim through. They don't go in the water, they go through the concrete. So this is top level, like big brain material stuff. And some normal, smooth brained, zero brain cell, self contradictory hypocrisy, blah, blah, blah. Russia's UN guy said that their goal of demilitarizing Ukraine has been achieved. So, okay, that would, if you were telling the truth about your supposed goals, then you would leave now, because you're truthful and keep your word. So you are claiming you did what you said you were going to do, and your goal is accomplished. So therefore, you should leave, unless your goal was actually conquest, which it was, because that's what it always is. And also, that's the drone stuff. Oh, yeah. Also, this, people die in this or are in the process of dying in this, so I'm not going to play the video. But the boat that's behind this one, uh, not even Russian on Russian military uh, friendly fire, but Russia friendly firing on one of its own just fishing vessels in the Black Sea that was just out fishing, a fishing trawler. So apparently that spooked some Russian sailors on one of their ships, and they felt the need to launch missiles at it. So okay, fishing boats, very 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 scary, very scary. Uh, oh yeah. So they are in fact in the process of finalizing the manufacturing line as they have done for the various drones of their own. They are finalizing the construction line process for actual cruise missiles of their own that are uh, kind of, technically uh, ours, but not ours, because we're giving them components and we're giving them like stabilizers, and we're guiding them through what to do to make stuff, and we're giving them the factory equipment and precision machinery to make them. We are stripping the components we're giving them of some classified stuff that's in it first. So these will be slightly more crude versions. They won't be of the same like absolute pinpoint accuracy, like to within 3 or 5 meters of target. but they will still be within like 15 to 25 meters of target. So basically they're making the actual, like, cylindrical form of the missile themselves, and then effectively everything else, minus some stuff that we rip out of it first, we are then sending them and letting them thus assemble their own thing. So they are going to be producing those themselves, so that no political stuff back home can tie too much up anymore. And also everybody cowardly like Germany, who doesn't want to actually do anything to, aggravate their girlfriend Russia too much, because Germany got super Stockholms during the occupation. Uh, doesn't have anything to cry about anymore, since Ukraine will be doing everything uh, in Ukraine and on its own. All right, is that the end of this list? No, it is not. No, it is not. There's more desperation ongoing. Oh yeah, there were uh not all of the drone strikes were on oil refineries and storage depots. There were some over here. Engels is either, I think, right over at this end of Saratov, or it's up here in Volgograd. And Engels is where a lot of the Russian strategic bombers take off from to launch air-launched cruise missiles. And two of the drone strike swarms were on that base, but this time they're doing a better job in the past than they have of like keeping their airmen at the base from, like, posting photos of damage or destruction up on their telegrams, because that's how everybody normally found out about, like, what kind of damage was done when various air bases across the border were struck in the past, was because Russian airmen in the Air Force would just immediately post it on Telegram and literally take selfies next to, like, burning aircraft rubble. So they're actually they're actually making a better effort into trying to keep them from posting that this time, but it always ends up coming up eventually. So the initial belief at the moment is two were damaged. Whether they're the newer kinds, the actual jet powered kinds, or whether they were two of the really ancient Tu-154 propeller strategic aircraft or not, unknown. But they're managing to keep the photos offline for the time being. And then, as I said, and as I showed that thing earlier, somewhere out here along the very thin, not very diverse Russian railway system across Siberia, two trains had another head-on collision. Again, this is the second time this has happened in like a month or two. And this time it wasn't two freight trains, it was only one freight train. The other train was a passenger train. So, yes, fatalities were involved, apart from just the two drivers of the different trains. And the reasoning, of course, being that one or both of the train operators were drunk on the job while driving the train. So, that's still a thing that's happening, and is happening more, actually. Uh, was there anything else? Oh, yeah, the submarine desperation stuff. Hold on. Let's get down. So, we're getting an indication that they might be starting to have issues with their MLRS, or their rocket artillery numbers, whether that's issues with Iran running out of old, like 3 generations old grad rockets to give them, or whether uh, Russia was lying about their total MLRS fleet numbers more than I thought they were. I was assuming they were only lying by the standard 20%. because they have not lost 500 units yet, 500 uh, art rocket artillery launching trucks out of a total 1,000 that they supposedly have. They haven't even lost 500 yet. They're getting close, but they haven't lost those yet. And yes, I do factor in that they probably have, a few dozen, maybe 50 in, some of their overseas places, which is predominantly Syria. But even adding that 50 onto the number lost in Ukraine still doesn't reach half of their supposed 1,000 of those yet. So they theoretically should have still, if they're telling the truth, just over 500. If they're lying to the degree I assumed they're lying, they should still have around like 300. But they're now resorting to scrapping these old anti-submarine missile. These a bit basically looks like a revolver gun drum. These old anti-submarine missile rocket firing things onto the beds of trucks. The truck itself, you can see, is also not the most modern thing in the world. So, that's not really like a flex exactly. That's kind of the opposite of a flex. That's more of a that's more of a you know can't throw the spear and the rock anymore, so going to throw the fish at the enemy. Okay, I think that's the extent of everything there. Well, except for the news that just happened like 5 seconds ago. But I was at the doctor's because despite trying to, so I missed that when it actually happened, but despite trying to avoid that, I actually got ear infection stuff, which is really, really discomforting. So I had to break my rule about, costing other people money because I don't have the money to spend. And I went to the doctors to get stuff to deal with my ear because that's one of the few things that I cannot just ignore. I can put up with pain basically anywhere else. I've been nauseous permanently for the last 12 years, so I can deal with that because I'm already like that anyways. I can deal with headaches. I can deal with being tired because I'm always tired, but no, you start throwing in the ear stuff. All right, I've reached my toleration limit. So I was not present when this actually happened, and I'm not going to show any imagery from this because that is all TOS, and also people are dead, and are also in the process of dying. And these were all just random civilians. So there's not even any like waivable thing. But there was a terror attack in Moscow just a few hours ago. Several gunmen gunned down a bunch of people at, I believe it was a concert, like a singer or a musical concert of some kind. And they killed like 40 people and injured several others. And then they also burned the building down, the concert venue or whatever. And ISIS claims that they did it and want the credit. And the dudes were like ISIS dudes. But then, of course, that's not how it's going on X, on Twitter, or on Telegram, or on TikTok. Everywhere where there is political discourse, we're going to put that in really big quotation marks. Uh, what is so ISIS says they did it. Uh, most people say, yeah, ISIS probably did it. But then there is Russia and everyone who works for Russia on Twitter who says, no, obviously it was the CIA. Then also on Twitter, I'm not going to, oh, there you can see it trending right there, actually. Uh, I'm not going to show a lot of those tweets because they also immediately turn anti Semitic and blame that they don't even they know they can't dog whistle by changing some of the vowels in the Jewish word anymore. So now they say the usual suspects, or the bankers. They're back to using the term the bankers. So there's a subgroup on there that's saying no, obviously it was the bankers that did it, and then oh, hold on. And Russia officially, like their government, is probably going to say it was Ukraine because obviously, and then Ukraine has been saying it was probably the FSB doing it to try to give pretense for like a mass mobilization once they blame it on Ukraine. So everybody is political shuffling about it. In reality, like, you know, no offense to anybody's conspiracy theory, but it, it probably was ISIS. ISIS really likes doing this kind of stuff. They're also kind of pissed that no one's paying attention to them anymore. That's kind of really irritating them. And also, Russia's been one of their like bigger bad boys for a while because Russia's actually the one who does like more of the stuff in Syria. Like we have troops there right along the border, around where some like pipeline infrastructure is, because of course we do. But apart from that, it's primarily Russia and Turkey who like do most of the bombing stuff there. Although Russia does it like all over here, where it's supposed to be under Assad's control, and Turkey just does it, in their quote unquote zone of safety that they created by invading northern Syria and occupying this region up here. Basically, you can just trace this along here, this somewhat stretch. But it's not an occupation zone. It's a Turkish administered zone of safety. And so, but supposedly, because they were actually also having issues with ISIS a little while ago, like a few weeks ago, down in either Chechnya or neighboring Ichkeria. The FSB was actually trying to seize several ISIS dudes down there, and they got into like a firefight, and a bunch of people were killed. And they were trying to like blow up an administrative building down there. And supposedly these dudes, where'd Moscow go? Oh, there it is. Supposedly the dudes who did this were from Chechnya, but they're more likely to be doing so for ISIS than they are to be doing so like for Kadyrov or something, because he's way too much of like Putin's uh, beach body selfie taking buddy to actually go for any kind of like separatism stuff, at least while Putin's alive. If Putin were to drop dead, though, he by all means, Kadyrov would immediately go for like uh, full warlord clan separation type stuff, but not while Putin is alive. Right, I think that's everything. Let me look down this list where I no longer write things in abbreviations because I learned that lesson. Ah, okay. That's that is okay. That is actually it. So then we can move on to the other stuff after I check chat, like a responsible person. Uh, collapse in what sense? I I maintain my like projection of things that I said kind of from the start of this, that everybody keeps misquoting me on, particularly Russian commenters, because of course, uh, that this whole fiasco will is bringing about the political end of what we know as Russia. This will be the third and final time that the empire shatters, sort of. But in terms of like collapsing, as in like what happened in Haiti, like descending into anarchy, no, that's not going to happen. Because there is for the same reason, like like when the Soviet Union shattered into pieces, it didn't collapse in that sense because there was a state underlying everything, and just in the same setup now, there is a state there. You can cut pieces from it, but it is still there. Even if those pieces then become separate portions of their own, that there is still, however corrupt things may be, however much, however undesirable conditions may be, there is still actually a state there underlying things to be left over. Whereas in, say, Haiti, that was not the case at all. When the current government just gave up in Haiti on pretending there was a state, there was nothing underneath to be left when they pulled out. So that's when anarchy comes about. There are a lot of issues with current Russia, but there is a state there. However functional or dysfunctional, it is there. But like I've said before, this is going to lead in to a break apart, the third and final one in barely over 100 years. But that actual portion of it is the actual like political segmentation and separation is going to be the second half of the 2020s, with like the actualization probably being towards like more the end. Like every time I've shown like a map of that, I've usually just stamped to for the sake of stamping a random date on the bottom. I usually would put something like 2029 or uh, uh, or just 2030 in one of them, because the final like actual failure in Ukraine is what's inevitably going to be like the the full nail to coffin driver. But the actual feeling of the cascading effects that the population is now going to be sent into with this new stage of stuff, that is also going to kind of help speed it up a little bit. And I think I still have the demonstrator map. If it loads, do I still have the demonstrator map? I don't have it here. Is it here? Well, this is a version of it, at least. So, Russia, you will frequently see, uh, you'll frequently see on a lot of places, likely collapse map of Russia, and it literally just shows every single oblast as like an independent state, or it like redraws it with like 17 different things that are all literally medieval kingdoms that existed 700 years ago. That is not how it's going to go for the 30th time, so that it is constantly recorded. Dagestan, Chechnya, Kalmykia, yes, they will break away. Yes, despite raging comments I got years back from predominantly, non-Dagestani, non-Chechen, non-Kalmyk, non-Tartar, non-Bashkir, but white, regular ethnic Russians about how much the people there love them and don't want to break away. Funnily enough, those got contrasted by comments that replied on those comments from people that were Tartar and Bashkir and like Dagestani, and talking about how they they don't get their hopes up too high because they doubt it will happen, but yes, they actually do want to break away. So sorry, I'm not taking Russians word for what other people want here. They told me that yes, we do want to break away, so I'm taking their word for it. But these five here, those are the ones in the Western chunk that will actually break. There are other ones, particularly in the North Caucasus, that might. I cannot say anything like definitively towards those. But what I am saying is yes, Chechnya, Dagestan, Kalmykia, Tartarstan, and Bashkiri, they will break away. The others, like the other North Caucasus regions, and the one other one here, Shuvashia, I think, that suddenly revamped their independence claims because they smelled blood in the water, basically. I don't know about those others. Plus, a lot of them are too bled in. They're too in mixed population wise. Whereas most of these here have uh, predominantly their regional ethnic groups in them, and also those Tatarstan and Bashkiri here who do have a lot of regular Russians in them. When the look like something like this is going to happen comes on a horizon, the people who, are not that ethnic group tend to leave and flee towards the place they're reasonably sure is going to stay as like a Russia thing. The split down the middle, yeah, people debate this one a lot, but this one, I call it 50-50, but I would lean towards this because the further you go out here, the more like dispensationalized everybody kind of gets with the Russian core over here. There is a feeling from all the various people I've talked to, from Vladivostok up to Khabarovsk, to one of my friends was also in Khakassia, which is right about here, if I remember correctly. Then to Novosibirsk, Yekaterinburg, and my other Russian friends are in Volgograd, although I haven't heard from her in a while. And the other one is in Oriol. Uh, there is a feeling of attachment to actual Russia. Russia stretches pretty strongly out along this arm here up until you reach around Novosibirsk, and then it starts to drop precipitously. And once you hit Khakassia and basically everything else to the east, it turns into a a far more sense of animosity and stolen money towards Western Russia. And then Tuva and Buryatia, I would call that there is a strong chance, but I wouldn't call that definitive. Definitively, like will break away is these five over here: Chechnya, Dagestan, Kalmykia, Tartarstan, and Bashkiri. Those five will break away. Yes. Uh, then other stuff might happen to the Northern Caucasus. Eurassia might do something, and there is a chance these two might want to go completely their own way. Uh, but and then there's also the 55-45 of a Western Russia Siberia split down sort of. I usually just roughly throw it on the Ob River here. But that will not be like what is happening here in Haiti. So Haiti is having a fun time right now. The current government of Haiti gave up on the country just altogether a couple weeks ago. The prime minister or president said, "Yeah, whatever," and fled, and the other people in various positions just kind of abdicated and ran too, and they left a few thousand cops, uh, a few thousand police officers, basically to try to both prevent anarchy and try to attempt to run the country and like maintain some kind of services. And that completely failed because, of course, it did. Because they were like overwhelmed within a matter of days. And all the gangs have like broken everybody out of prison. and they formed their own like prison gang armies. And now it's just like anarchy, and people are getting shot up in the streets. The gangs are obviously shooting each other because, of course, they are. Because after toppling the Romanian police force, the first thing they did was fight with each other over who gets to control the mess that's now made. So there are still functioning cell towers. There is still functioning internet in some places for now. So there is still stuff, information coming out of Haiti, not like regular Twitter posts and stuff like you would have seen a few weeks ago. So we have a vague idea what's going on there, but not really and not entirely because it's actual anarchy, like not the news hyperbolic anarchy that gets thrown onto like anything that ever happens ever, but like actual anarchy, as in there is no law, there is no rule at the moment. Thankfully, for a large part, decent chunks of the people outside of the capital in particular, but also in certain sections of the capital, have been able although they're basically most, basic services are down now, like, water and electricity and stuff for those who have them at least. They have been able to resume something as close to what their daily life was before as they can try. They're obviously predominantly making cash transactions, and they're just kind of taking each other's word at stuff, and are having to form like their own like local like suburb or neighborhood uh you know guard groups because effectively the Romanian police have kind of been defeated. No one's really doing anything. The people are kind of left on their own. At least, however, now the gangs are still in the process of mostly fighting each other, but a lot of people are dying as like collateral damage of that. And one of the gang leaders is now like asserting himself as the I don't know, prince of the country or something. So we're just kind of leaning. Everyone's kind of leaning their heads back, like internationally, and like prolonged sighing, wondering like what exactly we're supposed to do because there's no good options with this. Every single possible choice looks bad, is bad, will get treated as bad because it is bad. But at least from my perspective, we can't keep doing that because we have to make a choice at this point. And every choice is bad, and thusly will be seen as bad and treated as bad because it is. But you can't use that as an excuse to just like tilt your head back and sigh and not want to get up out of your seat and make an effort towards something. So that's going down over there, and uh, now Haitians are in particular. Everyone's afraid of them fleeing over to like Guantanamo Bay or something. When it's a lot easier for them to just flee into the Dominican Republic, which is what they've been doing for a while. And now a lot of them are trying to flee into the Dominican Republic because the Dominican Republic is fine. The Dominican Republic is actually a pretty great place. They got Punta Cana, La Romana. Don't know too much about. Santo Domingo is okay. Punta Cana is like really the tropical resort place to visit. But although by all means I do love the Bahamas, I only got to go there once and probably never will again. Uh, but if you do want to visit someplace in the Caribbean, if you have money and you've already been to the Bahamas or you don't just want to go to the Bahamas, I would definitely say Dominican Republic is actually a really great place. especially Punta Cana is probably the best. Other people, if you look around for opinions, other people might say that there's different locales that are better. I personally would want to go to Trinidad and Tobago, just so that I could walk around the cliffside, the like ocean shore cliff sides, and do a bunch of photography of all the different oil and gas platforms out there in the water. And then, of course, there is Saint Martin up here, which is where that famous airport is, where the aircraft fly in just over the beach, like 20 feet above you. I did get to go there a long time ago. All right, all right. So that's that. And then I think if we go back down here, we did have some more good news from Tunisia in particular. Have to go down to find it. It was from, I think, last week. There it is. Tunisia continued getting some more rain, still not as much as they normally would during March or February. They have gotten more rain, and they've climbed up by a further 2% to their total water reservoirs across the country being collectively, in total, over 37% full. Now, just as we hit the end of fall last year, they were down to only nationwide 19% of their total water supply was actually full. However, they've finally broken their rain vacuum that was over the country for like 6 years and have been getting rain off and on, and it has been enough now to push them back up to 37% water supply. So that is actually good. Then, if we go down to the opposite end of the continent, we have some bad news down here in South Africa, the problem child of everybody's family. Uh, where was, oh man, they've been going over here. I have to reorganize this. This is not where that should be going. So the the water supply, the public water service for Johannesburg, aka the biggest city in South Africa, where over 10% of the population is in just the Johannesburg area. If you factor in the other cities around it in its immediate area, then that's something like, I think, 15% of the population. The you know the taps went dry. The city, as of it started 2 weeks ago for some people, but now over the last few days, it has cascaded into the entire city. So now, when was it? March 12th. Oh man, that's been over a week then. March 12th was day one of like just the cascade collapse of it. So, this is not good. Uh, and on where was the 40? I want the 40% confirmation just so you guys know I'm talking. There it is. So, water coming from their dams, about 40% of it gets lost along the way because of how inept the water infrastructure is. It's leaking. The pipes have burst all over the place, above ground and underground. So they have several dams up here. You can see the reservoirs there and there for two of them. They're not that low, but they are down to about 30%. However, the cascade of like pipe failures along the infrastructure delivering the water to the city has gotten so bad that they cannot maintain water pressure enough to like actually have a functioning public water supply for there to be like stuff coming out when you turn on the shower or turn on a faucet. So the decent portion of that is because the majority of their water infrastructure. They're like main lines that bring the water in, and then the distribution system underneath the city before it gets into individual buildings and houses. Because a lot of the individual buildings and houses are things that were built in like the last 30 or 40 years. That were built kind of cheaply, but that's another story. A lot of that stuff is a minimum of 70 years old. Some of it's 90 years old. Some of it was built like just post World War II, and some of it was built in the 30s. So it should have been replaced a while ago. It really should have been replaced a couple decades ago at least. It should be getting replaced now because there's no more excuse, but it's not. You can guess why. It's the same reason as I told you in that South Africa's impending collapse power grid video. It's the same reason their power grid is falling apart. Because those in power, those in the government, are constantly funneling money away from the public expenditure fund, not just to repair and maintain the power grid, but also for stuff that would get spent on repairing the water pipeline network. So that is also getting funneled into politicians' bank accounts. And you guys remember that stream I did several months back, where like one of the guys who was named like the head investigator for investigating several of their like parliament members for funneling money away was he got killed in a random drive-by shooting before he was about to present his evidence. So the problem is still ongoing. Captured these last night because this was one of their top stories. One of their or their parliament speaker or whatever has now had to step aside or resign because she's being investigated for corruption and fraud, aka funneling the money into her own account. So, and the way that feedback loop works, as I've explained before, is whether it's the electricity network or whether it's the water distribution network. Money gets funneled away from it from being spent on maintaining it into people's personal bank accounts. That results in degradation and problems, which then lead to the electricity network or the water distribution network being able to distribute less, which earns them less money, which means there's less overall. So the portion that the politicians funnel into their own bank accounts becomes a bigger portion of the overall money that could be spent. And then, thus, there's even less money to then be spent on maintaining stuff, which means the problems get worse, which means less stuff gets delivered, which means they earn even less money. So then that same portion grows even bigger that the politicians take for themselves. And this creates a negative feedback loop. And thus, that then starts, damaging the economy itself, which means the government earns less money overall, which means the politicians take more money from the electricity grid fund and the water distribution fund because now the other stuff is also earning less money, and it would, I don't know, get too visible that they're taking money from the other stuff, and everyone just kind of already accepts it as a fact of life that they're going to take money from the electricity grid and take money from the water distribution system, uh, because that's just become like an ingrained, accepted fact of life, I guess. Like a whole, well, what are you going to do about it kind of thing. Uh, do what you should do about it, people of South Africa, which is uh, overthrow your government. Actually, honestly, that's kind of what you're getting to. Uh, you know, if you've reached the end of the system, then burn the system down. But that's been the solution for a lot of people, and a lot of people won't really do it. Oh, wait. But South Africans might, because actually, I forgot that part. I forgot that part. So, in here, uh, I don't remember which section this was in. Okay, it was shorter than I thought. but it might be in the middle section or it might be in the first section. You guys, South Africa water crisis and stuff. You can look that up and find it. But the spokespeople, like the politicians who made the public statements, commenting to like the reporters who were asking them about why this is happening, how could the Water Bureau mismanage things this badly? The politicians did the one thing that always guarantees you to get lynched, basically. Their answer was that it's the people's fault. They literally answered that it's the people of South Africa's fault for using too much water. That's why the system is broken. Uh, the people using too much water is why the somehow that is why the politicians are taking the money for themselves that would otherwise get spent to repair 70-year-old pipelines. It's because it's the people's fault. So, that that I think we all know how that usually ends. That ends in like French Revolution type stuff. That's the whole let them eat cake scenario usually ends with guillotines, which is honestly how they seem to want to play this. Like this is like Iranian government type stuff. Like this is like desperately trying to get your own people to revolt against you type of decisions. Like I can't fathom like this level of like negative IQ. But it's ongoing. It's being done. Okay, check chat. Ooh, Peru. Peru's cool. I love Peru actually. Peru is the only country that can be trusted to grow blueberries properly. Out of the various source countries that are available, at least at the different stores I've been to in different parts of the US, uh, the different source countries of blueberries have always been either the US, Canada, Mexico, Chile, or Peru. And Peru is the only country I can trust to grow blueberries. They are consistent. They're always the same consistency of quality, and their quality is always high quality. The only other one who's been somewhat trustable is Mexico. Uh, Half and half, like 50% of the time, Mexican blueberries will be really good. 50% of the time, they'll at least be of a decent texture, and they won't be like soggy and rotted, uh, like U.S. blueberries usually are, or Canadian blueberries are the worst. But so Mexican blueberries will always at least be of a consistent like healthiness of the berry, but half the time they won't taste like anything. Whereas Peru, the blueberries from Peru are always like the pinnacle of blueberry quality. And their neighbor to the north, Ecuador, is the only one you can really trust with bananas. Honduras, Guatemala, and Colombia, I've had bananas from them. They all start rotting within like 3 days. Whereas Ecuador, they are good for a while, and they are like good. As in they're good, good. They taste good. Uh, Mexico's primary thing that you should trust Mexico with is bell peppers. And excuse me, are you going to click when I tell you to click? Thank you. And pears, I get año pears. Those are actually best grown in the U.S. The año pears that come to the store down here where I'm trapped are usually from either Michigan or New York, actually, which is a bit odd. I actually thought pears were like a tropical fruit, but apparently not. And the other things you can trust the U.S. with, fruit-wise and vegetable-wise, are carrots and spinach. The US actually does those really good, and red delicious apples specifically. I don't eat any other kind of apples, so I can't comment on any other kind of apples. But red delicious apples, most of which get grown in New York, uh, are actually the US does very well. Oh, and mangoes, I forgot. Mangoes, primarily for mango juice. Only trust Brazil. Only trust Brazil for mangoes. But yeah, Peru's pretty cool. I think that's the end of the stuff we have for this time. Since I had to keep this short anyways, we've already run over time, and I want to eat something and potentially go mod Josh's stream if he's streaming. Although I think he sent me a text saying he's not. Let me check. No, there. Uh, no, he is not. Okay, so I could run overtime, but I'm still not going to. I do not know where the potatoes come from when I eat potatoes. Because I usually eat mashed potatoes, and the mashing has usually been pre-done in a bag, and they're not labeled with like their origin. Since Idaho produces the most in the U.S. in terms of potatoes, I'd assume they probably come from Idaho. But again, that's just an assumption that I'm making. All right. That is going to be it then. So I will continue working on the next set of videos. Also, the get in here, get to the channel. Come on. No, that's PayPal. You need Patreon. Okay, so since Twitter is too cringe for me to ask anybody to go on, and YouTube always crops images really horribly, and all the other like photography oriented sites are meant for people to upload from their phone, which I can't because my phone is not a smartphone. It's a dumb phone that costs like $60, and it's cracked all over because I've been using it for like 5 years or whatever. But here on my Patreon, I will actually start uploading my photography stuff because I wanted to actually post my photography stuff for a while. Uh, so I'm going to be posting it here. And Patreon does blur, it compresses the image so it blurs it a decent bit. So you have to actually click on it like this to be able to see a unblurred version, the regular high quality version. You shouldn't be able to zoom any further than this. Okay, you can't. Okay. I was going to say, I don't remember the picture size when I reviewed it being this big. But yeah, so I'm going to start uploading my actual photography stuff here from all the photography that I took back when I had opportunities to take photography. Uh, but those days are basically gone because I don't go anywhere because I kind of can't because that would require either money, which I don't have, or would require other people spending money, which I'm not going to make other people do. Uh, but yeah, you can click on. You'll just have to click on them, and then it will show you an actual version without all the blur. But there's already like a dozen or so on here, so I had an excuse to not post for like a day or two. But as of tonight, I'm going to start actually uploading a couple every night. But I have thousands I can pull from, so there'll be a lot eventually. And also, this here, or actually, we could probably go to community posts. Uh, all the you guys know about all the different Google Docs that I make for you guys. I am assuming since no one said that it doesn't work, that this link works. This is a folder link so that I can just post the one link each time instead of all dozen links. So that's the folder link in this community post. It's also in the profile here part of my channel, but you have to copy and paste it like every other link there. So you'd have to do that. But I have them all in an organized folder now, so that we only have to deal with one link. But you can go in here, or you have to double click, I think. You can go in here, and any of the different Google Docs are here with all the stuff that I put together. And like I said before, you guys, this is free 24/7. It's always there. You can use it in your own stuff, your own videos if you want to. It's not like I own the data or anything. And also, I wouldn't charge for anything, even if I even if I could, because I don't. I just don't do that. But so there's those two updates and stuff, and I will continue trying to put up videos rapidly at a rate of at least one every 2 days. But we'll see how fast that falls apart, and potentially a potentially two streams next week, maybe, or potentially just the one. It depends on how much stuff happens. And if I have something topical I want to go over instead as well, but we'll all see. But that's going to be the end of this one. So thank you, everybody, for being here. All 7 or 8 or 16 at one point people, uh, but two people who actually talk. So thank you guys, and I will see you guys around next time.